I'm going to be talking about helmet safety and why I believe it should be a law for all motorcyclists to be required to wear a helmet. In the New York Times article that I found, which was written by Dr. Perry Kloss, she stated that Dr. Gary Freed, a professor of pediatric and health policy at the University of Michigan, says that the best way for people to stay safe on bicycles is to first wear a helmet and second, follow the rules of the road. So even just on a regular bicycle, the number one way to stay safe and prevent injuries is wearing a helmet. And it just gets more dangerous as you add a motor. In the same New York Times article, it states that Russell Griffin, who is an associate professor of epidemiology at the University of Alabama, conducted a study in 2008 about injuries sustained from motor scooters. And he says that injuries are 3 times more severe than they are in just a regular bicycle or regular scooter as soon as you add a motor to either of those things. The New York Times article also brings up Salt Lake City and our most recent explosion of motor scooters, as you probably all know if you've ever been downtown. There's a doctor that works at the University of Utah in the ER. His name is Dr. Troy Madsen, and he started recording some data regarding injuries related to these motor scooter accidents that have been happening recently. And he said that a lot of the cases have been severe, and there has been a handful of traumatic brain injuries that have resulted from these incidences. He says that most of the time it is between your first and 10th ride that these injuries are occurring. So it's people who don't know what they're doing and have never been on a motor scooter before. And of course, they do not require you to wear helmets to use these motor scooters around town. What I think is the scariest is that these motor scooters actually can only go 15 miles per hour. So if you can just imagine these bullet bikes that are on the freeway going upwards of 100 miles per hour, and I know personally that I don't see very many of them wearing helmets. Of course, like any issue, there are both sides, and we do see plenty of people who are smart enough to wear helmets, but I'm just using this as an example of people that I see not wearing helmets going that quickly on the freeway. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety states that helmets can reduce injury between 37 and 42% compared to dying in car accidents. And they also state that in 2016, the number of deaths on motorcycles in the United States was nearly 28 times higher than it was just in regular cars. So these stats should speak for themselves, but in 2010, the CDC found that when riders do wear their helmets, insurance companies save more than $3 billion. So when these states do have motorcyclists required to wear helmets, insurance rates actually drop. Wikipedia shows us that there are actually only 19 states that require all of their motorcyclists to wear helmets, and then 28 states require only certain people to wear helmets. Like the state of Utah, we only require people here to wear helmets if they are under 17 years old. So, some of the reasons that motorcyclists don't like to wear helmets, they say that it increases fatigue, it can reduce hearing on the road, and it can also reduce their visibility. Like they can't see through the helmets as well as they could just looking outward. But what's interesting is that most states do require them to wear some sort of eye gear while they're riding. So the Highway Loss Data Institute has discovered that there's not really an increase or decrease in the accidents that are happening in the states that either have laws or don't have laws. So it's important to point out that helmets do not decrease accidents. They do, however, decrease injuries sustained from those accidents. And if you live in the state of Utah, you are probably familiar with our Click It or Ticket ad that is on TV and radio all the time. Because, as you know, if you live here, we are required by law to wear our seatbelts while we're driving. And again, these seatbelts do not prevent us from getting in accidents. They prevent us from sustaining injuries in the accidents that are going to happen. And I believe that because we are required to wear seatbelts in the state of Utah, and in most states actually in the United States, I think it's pretty obvious that we should also require motorcyclists to wear helmets to prevent those injuries. Now, a few personal stories that I have, just to back up all of the statistics, is that my boyfriend last year was riding in a car behind a motorcyclist They were on a highway where the speed limit was only 40 miles per hour, so they weren't going very fast, not compared to freeway speeds anyway. And the motorcyclist was in his 50s. He was not wearing a helmet. He hit a pothole just right where his bike slid out from underneath him and hit his head on the road. And my boyfriend had to pull over and be there with him while he was passing away before the helicopter, the life flight helicopter, could get there. And then another story that I have is from my dad. When he was in high school, one of his friends, who was also, a teenager, was riding his dirt bike around town, which of course the speed limits there are only 20 to 25 miles per hour, and he hit a patch of gravel, and again the bike slid out from underneath him. He wasn't wearing a helmet, and he hit his head right on the curb and passed away right there in the street as well. So I share these two stories with you because I want you to realize that it doesn't matter the age that you are. It doesn't matter how experienced you think that you are on a motorcycle. It doesn't matter how fast you're going. The point is that these accidents can happen to anyone, and if you can take any precaution to protect yourself and keep yourself alive, just like wearing a seatbelt, you should be wearing a helmet. And that's why I believe that we should put that in our laws, that motorcyclists should be required to wear helmets. Thank you.